The garage sat on the edge of town, more forgotten than frequented. Dust clung to its windows like memories too old to matter. Eli Torres, a 30-something, mechanic with calloused hands and a quiet demeanor, spent his days tinkering with machines most folks had given up on. Business had slowed to a crawl. His tools, mismatched and worn, lay scattered like his unpaid bills. Each creak of the old garage door gave him hope it might be a customer. But mostly it was silence, until one late afternoon, a sleek black Escalade rolled up, its chrome catching the sun like a blade. Out stepped Ava Lane, her sharp heels tapping the concrete like punctuation. She was striking impeccably dressed, hair tied in a severe bun, her face guarded. But beside her sat an even more arresting presence. Her daughter, Lila, no older than 8, seated in a custom wheelchair. Her legs were slender, unmoving. Her big brown eyes took in the dusty garage. Unsure, hopeful, Ava scanned the shop with hesitant precision before walking toward Eli, who wiped his hands on an oily rag and nodded a cautious welcome. "I was told you can fix anything," she said, voice half skeptical, half exhausted. Eli raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "My daughter's wheelchair. It needs adjustment, something more stable. She falls forward sometimes. No one's been able to fix it without making it worse." Her words didn't match her world. She was a billionaire founder of a medtech empire. Yet here she stood, in a greasy local shop, asking for help from a man with holes in his boots. Eli didn't ask for details. He looked at the girl, then at the chair, then back at Ava. "Leave it with me," he said simply. Ava hesitated, her jaw tight. "No cost," Eli added. "Just time." She blinked, surprised. For a moment, the fierce businesswoman faded, and the scared mother surfaced. She nodded once. Lila waved shyly, her thin arm rising like a question mark. Eli knelt beside her, inspecting the wheelchair gently, as if it were made of porcelain. Then the mother and daughter left. The Escalade's tires crunched gravel as it disappeared down the hill, and for the first time in months, Eli worked with purpose. He stripped the chair down, examining each bolt and bracket, but it wasn't just about balance. The mechanics were fine. It was the girl's posture, the weight distribution, something deeper. Eli, once an engineering student before life took a detour, saw what others didn't. Over the next few days, he repurposed motorcycle shocks and salvaged sensors from broken drones. He crafted braces lightweight but strong that could sense pressure and respond with micro-adjustments. He didn't sleep much, he didn't eat much either, but each piece brought him closer. He wasn't just fixing a chair, he was challenging what the world said couldn't be done. When Ava returned a week later, she was expecting disappointment. Maybe a smoother ride, maybe nothing. But Eli wheeled out the chair, sleek, sturdier, with braces that looked like they belonged in a lab, not a garage. Ava's eyes narrowed. "What's this?" she asked. Eli explained softly, his hands gesturing toward sensors. The leg braces respond to subtle muscle engagement. She might not walk, but she might stand, maybe more. Ava shook her head. "We've tried everything. Specialists from Johns Hopkins, Mayo. We spent millions." Eli said nothing. He simply looked at Lila and said, "Wanna try?" Lila looked at her mom, unsure. Ava nodded, holding back tears. Eli gently helped the little girl up, the braces, supporting her from beneath. At first, nothing, then a shift. Lila's tiny frame trembled. Her toes adjusted slightly. Her fingers gripped the chair arms, and then she stood, not fully, not steadily, but she stood. Ava's breath caught in her throat. Her hand went to her mouth. "Don't move," she whispered. But Lila did, one shaky step forward, then another. Eli steadied her, but she was doing it, walking, and in that moment the garage was church. Ava sank to her knees, trembling. She was used to boardrooms, to power, to control, but nothing prepared her for this. Her daughter walking toward her. Each step was a miracle, not delivered by doctors or labs, but by a man in a grease-stained shirt. "How?" she whispered. Eli didn't speak. Lila was laughing now, a bubbling sound of joy that filled the empty shop. She collapsed into her mother's arms, smiling. Ava held her tight, sobbing into her daughter's shoulder. Outside, the wind carried the sound of hope through the town that had almost forgotten it. Word spread quickly. The billionaire's Escalade had been seen at Torres' garage twice. Rumors swirled, but Eli didn't care. He kept tweaking the design, adjusting the tension on the braces, studying how Lila moved. He added carbon fiber parts to lighten the load. He borrowed tools from neighboring shops. He didn't charge Ava a penny. Every evening, Lila returned with her mother. Sometimes she walked 2 steps, sometimes 5. But every time she smiled, and every time Ava watched with awe. "Why are you doing this?" she asked him one evening. Eli just shrugged. Because no one else would. One night, after Lila had left, Eli sat alone in the garage. He looked at the pile of unpaid invoices on his desk. The eviction notice, pinned to the wall. His fridge was empty, his phone bill overdue. But he didn't care. He replayed the image of Lila's steps again and again in his mind. That, to him, was enough. Across town, Ava Lane was watching old home videos of her daughter before the diagnosis, before the surgeries. And for the first time in years, she dared to believe her daughter might have a future beyond confinement. Ava began showing up earlier, staying longer. Sometimes she brought food, sometimes spare parts. Once she even brought Eli a set of brand new tools. "Donation," she said. He tried to refuse. She insisted. Lila started to call him Mr. Eli and drew pictures of the garage with bright colors and smiley faces. She told her teachers she was going to walk into school soon, just to surprise them. Her therapists were baffled, the medical experts too. "Who built these braces?" one asked. "Where did you find this tech?" Ava smiled faintly. "I didn't find tech," she said. "I found Eli." Meanwhile, Eli's designs were evolving. He realized the brace needed more than support. It needed memory. He added sensors that could learn from Lila's movements, adapting with each use. He soldered circuits late into the night, hands shaking from fatigue. But he pushed on. Then one morning, Lila walked 10 full steps without holding anything. She looked like a newborn deer, shaky but proud. Ava screamed with joy, covering her mouth. "Mommy, look!" Lila shouted. "I'm walking!" Neighbors poked their heads out from stores and shops, watching the little girl wobble across the sidewalk like she owned the world. Cameras arrived a day later. Reporters from local channels came snooping. Eli hated it. He stayed inside, avoiding questions. But Ava, now deeply moved, finally shared the story on her terms. She posted a video on social media showing Lila walking in the garage, hugging Eli and drawing her name in chalk. Within hours, it went viral. "Billionaire mom's daughter walks, thanks to small-town mechanic." Millions of views, thousands of comments, offers poured in. Venture capitalists wanted in. Ava turned them all away. "This isn't a business," she said. "This is grace." But the world didn't forget the man behind it. At night, Eli looked out at the stars, the sound of his fan ticking overhead. He didn't dream of money or recognition. He dreamed of little legs walking through, school hallways, of playgrounds with laughter, of possibility. And in that quiet, dusty garage, where oil stained the floor and the lights flickered overhead, something sacred had been born, not in the form of machines, but in belief. A mother's faith, a child's laughter, a mechanic's hands. And just as the sun broke across the town's skyline the next morning, Lila returned once more, ready to take another step forward. News of Eli's invention spread rapidly, from local papers to national news outlets. Reporters flocked to the garage with microphones, cameras, and questions. Headlines read, "Unknown mechanic builds mobility breakthrough." Girl walks thanks to garage genius. Ava Lane, typically a media darling herself, stepped aside to let Eli take the spotlight. But Eli didn't bask in it. He looked uncomfortable on camera, often stepping away mid-question to check on a tool or offer Lila a high five. Despite his discomfort, he smiled each time Lila giggled and walked on her own without support. Ava knew she couldn't let this end here. One morning, she returned to the garage, not in a limousine, but in jeans and a flannel shirt, holding a contract. She offered Eli a $2 million position at her biomedical company as Chief Innovation Officer. Eli looked stunned. He read the offer, then shook his head. "I didn't do it for money," he said. Ava didn't argue. She simply respected his words and smiled. Instead, Ava extended a different kind of invitation. She was organizing a Children's Innovation Summit in Boston, a national event celebrating breakthroughs in youth health. She asked Eli to present the mobility system and to bring Lila along to demonstrate. Eli hesitated at first. "I've never been on a stage before," he said, nervously rubbing a grease-stained rag between his hands. But when Lila chimed in, "I want to show them how I walk now," Eli couldn't say no. The summit was held in a massive auditorium, filled with doctors, engineers, teachers, and families. Backstage, Eli looked overwhelmed by the size of it all. He fidgeted with his collar and wiped his hands on his pants. Ava placed a hand on his shoulder. "Just speak from the heart." When their names were called, the crowd hushed. Lila stepped onto the stage with confidence, wearing her custom braces, her pigtails bouncing with each step. She walked from one side of the stage to the other, slowly, steadily, without assistance. The audience erupted into applause. Some wiped tears. Doctors leaned forward in disbelief. Then Eli stepped to the microphone. "I'm not a scientist," he began. "I just fixed engines. But sometimes a broken thing ain't really broken, it's just waiting for someone to see it differently." The crowd leaned in. "She believed I could help her walk, so I tried, that's it." A young reporter stood up and asked, "What made you take on a challenge so far outside your field?" Eli looked at Lila, smiling proudly. "Because someone believed I could," he repeated. Ava stood beside him, tears forming in her eyes. She looked at him not as a billionaire executive, but as a mother full of gratitude. The room stood in applause again, echoing with appreciation, not just for the invention, but for the spirit behind it. After the summit, Ava held a surprise press conference. Standing with Eli and Lila, she announced the creation of a new nonprofit, the Eli Foundation for Motion. The organization would be dedicated to creating custom mobility devices for children with physical challenges free of cost. "It's time the world saw what compassion and innovation can build together," she said. Eli looked stunned, unsure what to say. Lila wrapped her arms around his leg, grounding him in the moment. The foundation's launch went viral. Donations poured in. Engineering students from MIT and Stanford reached out, asking to intern under Eli. Ava's company offered lab space and staff. Still, Eli insisted on working from his garage. "It's where I think best," he said. Back in Texas, a fresh coat of paint covered the old sign outside the garage. It now read, "Eli's Garage Where Hope Gets." Rebuilt. Tourists drove miles to take pictures, but Eli stayed humble through it all. Every few weeks, Lila would visit. She no longer came in a wheelchair, but always brought her braces to show the improvements Eli made. He continued tweaking the designs, adding lighter parts, testing new materials. Ava often sat in the corner watching. "He doesn't just fix machines," she once said during an interview. "He rebuilds what people thought was lost: belief, joy, strength." And for the first time in her life, she didn't feel like the one solving problems. Lila grew stronger. Her muscles adapted. She began running short distances. At school, kids called her Iron Girl, and she wore it like a badge of honor. Her teacher said she was more confident, more outspoken. One even asked her what she wanted to be when she grew up. Without hesitation, she answered, "A mechanic." Like Eli. Her response went viral. Soon, other children with disabilities wrote letters to Eli, asking if he could help them too. Eli read every letter. Some made him cry, others made him smile. All of them reminded him why he did what he did. With Ava's support, he built a small team of local mechanics and volunteers. They opened a second space next to the garage, where children and families came in for fittings and consultations. Eli kept a whiteboard filled with sketches and timelines, but every night he still swept the shop floor himself, just like he always had. As the foundation expanded, Ava was offered awards and recognition from various organizations. She accepted them, but insisted Eli join her on stage each time. At one gala in New York, she introduced him with a simple sentence: "Meet the man who reminded me that brilliance often wears grease-stained boots." The crowd gave a standing ovation. Eli took the mic, looked around nervously, and said, "Let's get more kids walking. That's all I want." It was the shortest speech of the night and the most powerful. In time, documentaries were made. A Netflix team followed Eli for a month, capturing his journey from a broke mechanic to a national hero. Ava helped produce the project, but kept her name in the background. "This is his story," she told the director. The documentary was titled "Wrenched Hearts, the Garage That Healed," and reached millions. Families all over the world began requesting the blueprints for Eli's braces, and Eli shared them freely, saying, "Hope isn't something you patent." On the one-year anniversary of Lila's first steps, a celebration was held in the garage. Friends, families, and volunteers gathered. Eli gave Lila a gift, a custom toolbox painted with flames and her name in gold. "Every mechanic needs her own tools," he said. Lila hugged him tightly. Ava watched from nearby, her eyes brimming with gratitude once again. It wasn't just about walking, it was about giving her daughter a future full of choice, independence, and joy. As the sun set over the Texas town, the garage glowed with warmth, both literal and emotional. Parents wheeled in children from nearby towns. Engineers from universities dropped by to volunteer. Local businesses donated parts and materials, and Eli, who once struggled to pay rent, now spent his days fixing more than engines. He fixed dreams, he rebuilt courage, and most importantly, he showed the world that you don't need a fancy degree to make a difference, you just need heart. That night, after the celebration ended, Eli sat alone in the garage. He looked at the now empty wheelchair in the corner. A soft smile crossed his face. He wasn't chasing headlines or wealth. He had found something greater purpose. He turned off the lights, locked the doors, and walked home. Tomorrow, more kids would come, more challenges would arise, but Eli Torres, the mechanic who once only fixed cars, would be ready, because when hope drives your hands, every tool becomes a miracle.